What does one get when one of Hollywood's most esteemed actors steps into what taught to be a typical morning show interview, only to discover himself in the crosshairs of a host who will stoop at nothing to get headlines? What you are going to see is the most dynamization moment in recent history, a confrontation so heated that I tended insecurity being summoned, and a guest being physically removed from the building. This is the tale of how a silk stocking promotional appearance became a career-altering moment that no one was expecting. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment in the comments below, because this tale becomes even more unbelievable minute by minute. Matt Damon settled into the familiar orange chair on the view set, his typical easygoing attitude still intact as the camera scrawled for what was to be a simple interview about his new film venture. The morning began, like any other promotional outing, with the usual pre and pleasantries and a rapid review of issues from the production staff. But something seemed different in the air the morning. Tension that appeared to emanate from one specific corner off the panel. Joy Behar faced him, her face bearing an edge that veteran television viewers may know as the expression OAFA person gearing up for combat instead of discers. She had remained unusual lacillant during the commercial break, her usual bubbly banter superseded by animosed, predatory quietness as Sharamage threw her notes with press's deliberation. So Matt Joy started, her tone possessing a sweetness that ominously sounded menacing. Before we discuss your movie, I believe our audience should be informed of where you truly stand on some significant issues. You've been really quiet recently regarding certain political issues. Matt leaned a bit to one side in his chair, keeping his professional mien intact despite the clear ambush situation. Well, Joy, I'm here to discuss the film, which I believe will truly enjoy. It's a tale of family and recovery that I think touches every person, no matter what their politics are. Oh, please, Joy cut in, her smile of civility falling quicker than a curtain on a poor performance. You can't simply retreat behind her films when the world is coming apart at the seams. You have a microphone. You have a forum. Handlessly, your silences on issues of importance are thunderous. The other hosts looked at each other, feeling the change in energy they'd every experienced television professional comes to know. This wasn't going to be a normal celebrity interview, and the studio audience started to hum with excitement. I'm not hiding behind anything, Matt said back, his voice steady, but with an undertone creeping. I do think it's responsible to use my platform, and sometimes that means not jumping into every issue that arises. You'll like to stick to the work and allow that to speak for itself. Joy leaned in, her eyes nearing as she was about to deliver what she apparently believed was a knockout punch. Responsible. You call remaining mute while democratizing on the line responsible? You call being neutral when fundamental human rights are being assaulted responsible? That is not responsible, Matt. That's cowardice. The word hung suspended like a challenge, and Matt's jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. The audience became mute, sensing that something historic was taking place before their very eyes. I think you're confusing having principles with cowardice, Matt stated, his voice still in command, but with mystical steel underlying the surface. I've never been quiet about things I care deeply about. I've simply decided to take positions in ways that I think are more effective than staging outrage for television cameras. Staging outrage. Joy's voice went up an octave, her face flushing with what seemed like relanger. You think showing concern for justice is staging? You think defending what is right is just heater? This is just the sort off-privileged Hollywood elitism that Peoply are tired of? The irony of a TiVost attacking someone else for acting was not missed by the audience, but Joy appeared to be blind to it as she continued her tirade. The rest of the hosts grew more and more uncomfortable, obviously wishing to step in, but not knowing how to deal with the fast degrading situation. I never said valuing justice was acting, Matt responded, his patience starting to show crack strain. What I had said was that I like to select my battles well and fight in ways that might even do some good instead, merely making noise. Joy's voice cracked with outrage. You think fighting for the rights of people is just making noise? You think getting up in the face of fascism is just making noise? This is just the sort of passivity that lets us all thrive. The discussion had shifted from interview to inquisition, with Joy obviously set on pushing Matt into a corner where he would either have to agree with her utterly or be painted as the bad guy. It was a strategy that had served her purposes before with less prepared company. But Matt Damon was no-yielding. "I think you're attributing words to my mouth that I never uttered," Matt said, his voice firming up. "And I think you're intentionally misstating my positions to macadrama where there needs to be none. This is not journalism, Joy. This is performance. Art." The charge struck home, and Joy's face turned from red to almost purple with anger. She had made her Namias the provocateur, the person who posed theto questions and held celebrities' toe count, being accused by her target wasn't in the script she had devised in her head. "Performance art?" she stuttered, her voice rising too. A shriek thought left a number of audience members. "West C, you'd like to discuss performance art? We can discuss how you've performed the part of the concerned citizen while doing nothing at all to assist when it counts the most. We can discuss how you've performed showing care while people struggle." The studio was a pressure cooker with the tension so thick that it felt a press against the walls. The camera kept rolling, recording every second off what was turning out to be one of most painful interviews in television history. The control room producers were desperately struggling to decide whether to go to commercials or low, the train wreck to continue. Matt took a deep breath, obviously making a choice about how far he would allow this to go. "Joy, I came here in good faith to discuss a project about which I'm proud, something that could bring a little joy and hope into people's lives. Instead of made this an ambush, tended to paint me in a negative light for no datering to your specific type of activism. That's not fair to your audience, and it's not good TV. Good TV." Joy's laugh was bitter and cutting. "Yabuliev, this is about good TV. This is about taking responsibility. This is about using your privilege to be antigen of change rather than one-off wealth. But I suppose that's asking too much from Simeon, who cares more about his image than he cares about justice." The personal attack went over a line that event the most incendiary interviewers tend not talkers, and the impact on Matt was immediate and apparent. His whole attitude changed, the affable movie star image dropping away to reveal something a great deal more serious beneath. "My image." Mott's voice fell to a low, threatening pitch that caused everyone in the studio to sit up straighter. "You want to discuss picture? Let's discuss how you've constructed your career on destroying people rather than constructing something. Let's discuss how you confuse cruelty with courage and to believe that meanness makes you courageous." The counterattack was immediate and swift, given with the sort of contended energy that reminded everyone in attendance that Matt Damon was moreathon a film celebrity, but a very rational man who had finally had no. Joy's eyes went wide, obviously not expecting her quarry to strike back with such vigor. "How dare you?" she whispered, quivering with fury. "How dare you appear on my program and physically attack him personally when all I'm attempting to do is to hold you accountable for your actions or otherwise. Your program." Matt's eyebrows arched in sincere surprise. "I assumed this was the View, not the Joy Behar program. Are you talking for everyone here, or just yourself?" The question hung there like a sword, and the other hosts were placed into the impossible situation of having topic sides in a war they never wanted to fight. The audience was silent now, spellbound by what they saw before them. Now Joy's face went through a few expressions bore, settling upon cold rage. She had obviously not anticipated her ambush going awry so dramatically, and her desperation was starting to seep through the cracks in her facade. "Don't you dare attempt to split this bottle," she spat, her tone just short of outrage. "We all understand what you're redoing, and we all understand what you stand for. Stand for all the things that are wrong with Hollywood, all the things that are wrong with privilege, all the things that are wrong with men who believe they can simply smile their way out of responsibility." The assault had become total personal now, eschewing any possibility of being about politics or social issues. Matt leaned back in his chair, his expression changing from anger to something that could have been pity. "Joy," he whispered, "I think you need to stand back and listen to yourself. This is not politics or social justice anymore. This is about you attempting to destroy somebody because a thee won't go along with your narrative. This is about you needing to the focus, even if it means burning down your own show to get there. The observation was presented with knife-like precision, slicing through all of Joy's rationalizations, and bearing the naked need for drama that had fueled her. Confrontational methods. The reality of it appeared to strike her like a blow, and for an instant, she sat in dumbfounded silence. But if Matt believed that instant of introspection would result in escalation, he weighs about to discover just how mistaken could be. Joy's silence was noth calm before the peace. It wastes silence before the storm. The silence lingered for what seemed like an eternity before Joy's face changed into something which could only be defined as pure venom. When Sheffenly talked, her voice was low and full of malice. You know what, Matt? You want to psychoanalyze me? Let's discuss your psychology. Let's discuss how you've ridden through life on your pretty face and your pseudo-Boston charm. Let's discuss how you've never had to fight for something worthwhile in your whole privileged life. The personal insult was so beyond the norms of professional behavior that even the most combative talk show hosts would have flinched. But Joy was obviously beyond caring about boundaries or professionalism. Taz blazed with something dangerous. My imitation Boston charm? You mean the town where I actually lived? Where I attended public school? Where my mother was Adeker? Unlike some individuals obviously believe growing up in Brooklyn and Nettles, them to attack anybody isn't of their specific brand off ire.
Oh.
Don't even suggest mentioning where I'm from, Joy growled, her voice ascending to a screech. Make this about location, when this is all about character. No. This is all about tengredity. This is about being an actual human being rather than some created movie star product. The other hosts were openly squirming in their chairs, obviously desperate. Toast up in, but frozen by the sheer intensity of the clash. The audience sat in stunned silence, witnessing what amounted to a verbal gladiator combat for their very eyes. A product of Hollywood spin doctoring, Matt's laughter was quick and inhumorous. From someone who's built a career in fabricating outrage for ratings. From some man who's made being perpetually offended into a business. That's rich, Joy. That's rich, at least I stand for something. Joy snapped back, her voice cracking with emotion. At least I use my platform to battle for individuals who can't battle for themselves. What do? You produce movies about being heroic, while doing nothing heroic in life. Yao batal for people. Matt's voice was incredulous. You assault people on television as entertainment? You ambush guests who come here in good faith? You turn every discussion into a battleground because conflict generates ratings. How is that for anyone but herself? Joy's face was a mask off her anger. How could you doubt my motives? How could you sit there in your designer outfit and your perfect life and try to tell me that I don't care about people? I've been fighting for justice since before you were even famous. Fighting for justice, Matt leaned forward, his voice falling to that dangerous whisper ogan. Is that what you call this? Is ambushing guests and drama struggling for justice? Because from where I'm sitting, it appears that you're struggling for ratings. The accusation hit home with devastating impact. Joy's whole body seemed to hum with fury as she absorbed what Matt had just uttered. The reality of it was so plain that everyone in the studio could sense it, which made her response the more explosive. You egotistical piece of dung, she spat, her voice not quite human. You believe you can come on me program and belittle me? You think you can sit there and criticize me? I've forgotten more about standing up for what's right than you'll ever remember. The curse words and personal slurs had broken the lines of broadcast decency. The producers were desperately flagging for a commercial break. But Joy did not care about broadcast standards or professional behavior. Matt leaned back in his chair, his face changing from free to something that looked almost as disgust. And there it is, he said softly. There's the true Joy. Bihar, not. The champion of justice, not the protector of the downtrodden. Simplicimine, who cannot stand to be called out for her actions. My actions. Joy's voice was raised to a shriek that made a number of members of the audience cover their ears. Wish to speak of behavior? Let us speak of how you've behaved your entire career. Let us speak of how you've remained silent while the world burns because it could harm your box office figures. You continue to say you've remained quiet, Matt answered, his tone firm in the midst of the chaos. But what you're actually saying is, I haven't done my political ideology for your amusement. What you're actually saying is that I haven't made my beliefs a circus act like you have done. The analogy to a circus act was the last thing. Joy's face turned from red to purple tone, near a human color of anger. Shegummed up so suddenly that her chair rolled back and crashed into thrill behind her. That's it, shelled, her voice ringing. Through the studio, I'm finished. I'm finished with your condescending air. I'm finished with your insincere superiority. And I'm finished with you just sitting there pretending you're better than everyone else. The studio came to an uproar as Joy started waving her arms wildly, her voice shooting to levels that were hardly understandable. The other hosts appeared frightened. The crowd was co-sipping in shock. And the cameras continued edge-rolling as TV history was being made in the most uncomfortable manner possible. Matt stayed put, his face now one of total serenity in the face of Joy's. Break down, Joy, he spoke softly. I think you have to breathe deeply and keep in mind that we are on television. I don't care about illusion, Joy screamed, her voice shattering with emotion. I care about truth, and the truth is that you're everything that's wrong with. You're everything that's wrong with privilege. You're everything that's wrong with... Men will think they can just smile and charm their way out of taking responsibility. The repeated attacks had taken on an almost manic quality, as if Joy was stuck in a loop of rage that she couldn't escape from. Matt watched at her with what could only be described as professional fascination, as if he was researching a rather fascinating anal species. Responsibility for what in particular? He demanded, his tone slicing through her hysteria with icy efficiency. What particular thing are you blaming me for? Because so far, all I've heard is a great deal of shrieking about abstract ideas without any real substance. The question seemed a short circuit. Joy's mind for a fraction of a second. She remained standing there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, evidently struggling to create sort of coherent answer to such a blunt challenge. Substance. She at last could sputter. You want substance? The substance is that you're a coward, stoops to hiding behind his fame while genuine people suffer. The substance is that you've had every chance to house your platform for good and you've adest to use it for profit instead. And what precisely should I have done friendly? Matt asked, his voice still maddeningly calm in the face of her hysteria. What particular steps should I have actions that would satisfy your expectations of acceptable conduct? Once again, Joy looked flummoxed by the bluntness of the question. Whole assault had been constructed on general charges and emotional manipulation. And when compelled target specific, she was reduced to saying nothing in particular. You ought to have said something, she mumbled, her voice losing some of its initial venom. You ought to have used your voice when it counted. I have used my voice, Matt responded. I've employed it to defend causes I believe in, to raise funds for groups that are doing valuable work and to advance projects that I believe have worth. That I haven't done the manner you'd like doesn't make it wrong. Joy's face went through a few iterations as she grappled with this answer. The reasonableness it appeared to make her even more angry than his previous taunts had, as if his failure to engage in hysterics with her was how an insult in and of itself. That's not now, she said, her voice growing loud again. It's not enough to get things done equitably. It's not enough to work behind scenes. People want to see you standing up. People want to see you fighting? Fighting like this, you mean? Matt nodded toward the mayhem they were in. Is this what you call fighting? Because it looks like performing to me. The word struck Joy like a blow, and her face twisted with anger once. Again, the peaceful, rational conversation had lasted a lot of 30 seconds before she reverted to screaming mode. Coughing, Joy's voice snapped like a whip around the studio. You think I'm acting? You think that my zeal for justice is all a performance? She started pacing behind her chair like an animal in a cage, her hands waving wildly as her voice reached heights that appeared to challenge human vocal cords. The other hosts had drawn back in their seats, their faces white with fear of being caught. In the crossfire, Matt observed her with scientific interest. "Hey, Joy, you're making my point with each word that leaves your lips. Look at yourself right now. This isn't about politics or justice. This is about you having to be the center of attention." Center of attention? Joy spun around to confront him, her face afire with anger. "You think this has anything to do with that, Nation? You think I like this? You think I like having to drag the truth out of people like you who are too cowardly to speak it themselves? Think you've convinced yourself that attacking people makes you a hero," Matt replied, his voice remaining steady. "I think Ove confused being mean with being brave, and being loud with being right." The observation cut through Joy's hysteria like a knife. For a moment, she stood frozen, struggling to formulate a reaction to such a blunt judgment of her character. "You don't know anything about me," she finally breathed, her voice trembling. "You don't know what I've been through, what I've struggled." "With what? If sacrifice for my convictions, then tell me," Matt replied, leaning forward. "Tell me what you've sacrificed. Tell me what you've really achieved being embarrassing people on television. Tell me one tangible thing you've done to improve the world, rather than just make it more rowdy." Decalang hung in the air, and Joy's face went through a dozen different expressions. As she looked for an answer, silence hung uncomfortably as everyone waited to see if she'd called off her any substance to support her passionate rhetoric. "I've raised awareness," she replied eventually, her voice sounding unconvincing. "I've begun conversations. I've made people stand and face uncomfortable truths." "Uncomfortable truths like what?" Matt prodded, sensing weakness. "That'll Britties must sign up with your political views, that anyone who does into their activism to your own satisfaction is somehow morally lacking." Joy's face started to reenact, figured out she was being cornered. "You're twisting my words," she interrupted, her voice rising. "You're making this about me when it should, about the issues. You made this about you the moment you chose Tomush, me, instead of having a conversation." Matt responded, "You made this about you when you turned what should have been a straightforward Werner. It's a personal attack. Each point that, with devastating accuracy, Unjoy's composure began to disintegrate. The other hosts witnessed in horror as their colleague's professional face fell apart. "You want to discuss respect?" Joy's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Where's your respect for the people who are hurt while you remain silent? Where's your respect for the democratic process which is under threat? The reality is that you've made this into your own therapy session." Matt's voice dropped to that dangerous whisper. "The reality is that use your platform to work through your own psychological issues on the back of fewer guests. The reality is that you've ablard having strong opinions and having character." The personal nature off, the attack seemed to strike Joy like a body blow. Her face turned white, then purple, as she struggled to make sense of what Matt had said. "How dare you?" she breathed, speaking hardly above a whisper. "Dare you psychoanalyze me? How dare you sit there and pretend you know something about who I am?" "I know that you've made your career out of tearing people apart," Matt stated, his voice increasing in strength. "I know that you'll confuse cruelty with courage and believeth being provocative makes you significant." Joy's body was actual trembling with anger. "Professional," she screamed, her voice cracking. "You want to discuss professional? Professional? To appear on someone's program and berate them? You told me I was a coward?" Matt raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You assaulted my character, my past, my occupation, and my integrity. You converted what should have been a discussion into an interrogation. And you think those were easy questions." Joy was left speechless for a moment. The cameras kept rolling and covered a very minute of her total breakdown as she desperately sought some means from regaining control. "I was trying to hold you responsible," she muttered weakly, her voice fading from its earlier passion. "No," Matt said curtly. "You were attempting to manufacture drama for ratings. You were attempting to corner me into a place where I would have to either agree with you entirely or be portrayed as Thevelaine. That is not journalism, Joy. That is simply bullying." The words came crashing down in Joy like a blow to the face. Her eyes widened in horror, and she looked momentarily vulnerable. But the moment quickly passed, too bare-placed by an expression of raw anger. Bullying? Her voice rose to a shriek that made a Fudiance member's wheeze. You think I'm a bully? You'll think defending what's right is being a bully? I think trying to hurt people who don't see things your way, Makasu, a bully, Matt responded calmly. I think ambushing guests is being a bully. I think turning every conversation into combat makes you a bully. Joy's face had now turned a shade of purple that appeared medically concerning. The other hosts were desperately trying to flag the producers to close out the segment. That's it. Joy screamed, her voice ringing through the studio. I'm finished. With this, I'm finished with you. I'm finished with your condescending attitude and your funny superiority. She started walking towards Matt's chair, her motives unknown, but her body language clearly aggressive. The audience gasped as security staff began moving from theater positions against the walls. Joy, one-offed other hosts, finally spoke up. Perhaps. We should break. No, Joy snapped, not looking away from Matt. No breaks. No commercial. No reprieve. He's going to stay there and respond for his cowardice. And he's going to do it immediately. Matt stayed seated, his face serene, in the face of fever more perilous circumstance. Joy, I think you need to step back and take breath. This has far exceeded anything like professional cucked. You're not wanted here, Joy asserted, her voice rising to maniac. You're not wanted on this program? You're not wanted to use this forum to impart your message of apathy and disinterest. Security guards were already advancing purposefully toward the set. The other hosts were attempting to regain order, and the audience was murmuring in dismay. At the historic breakdown, they were witnessing. Are you removing me from the show? Matt queried, his voice still calm in the face of the chaos around him. Are you going to actually throw me out, Beckus? You don't like my political opinion? I'm throwing you out because you're a coward, Joy shouted. I'm throwing you out for wasting Gavrion's time with your superficial charm and your meaningless words. Security had now arrived on the set. And Thelid Guard was talking quietly into his radio. He sized up the situation. Matt stared at him, then over at Joy, his face changing to something that could have been pity. This is really how you want this to end? I said softly. This is really the hill you want to die on. Get him out off here, Joy ordered, her finger shaking. As she pointed at Matagot, him out off here right now. Ow. I don't want to look at his face for another second. The security guard hesitated, clearly noticed. 2. Escorting out guests who hadn't truly done anything bad. Matt slowly got up from his seat, his movements very deliberate and very calm. It's fine, heddled the security guard. I'll go. This obviously isn't the sort of atmosphere where real conversation is going to happen. As he started to take off his microphone, Joy's voice became one last shriek. Don't you dare play the high road. Don't you dare try to turn this into issue about me, when you're the one who wouldn't get involved. Honestly, Matt stopped and focused straight at Joy with a look of total tranquility. Joy, I hope you can get the help you require. I truly do, because this is not normal behavior, and it isn't healthy for you or anyone it is around you. The last observation was spoken with such kind sincerity that it seemed to pierce all off Joy's defenses. For an instant, she stood there, appearing totally lost, as if she had all of a sudden come to realize what she had done. But the moment passed, and her countenance firmed again. Get out, she whispered. Just get out. Matt completed unhooking his microphone. Put it down on his chair with care, and walked steadily toward the door with the security guard following him. Thekamaras tracked his every move as he kept his dignity in spite of the mayhem was leaving behind. As he reached the door to the studio, he turned around once more time. Good luck with the show, he said quietly, and then he was gone. The studio sat in stunned silence as the full impact of what had just occurred began to sink in. Joy stood alone in the destruction of her own creation, her face working through emotions too complex to define. And that's how one of Hollywood's most respected actors found himself escorted out of a television studio. Not for anything he had done, his both refusing to play along with a host's desperate need for drama over substance. What did you think of This unbelievable breakdown? Have you ever seen anything like Joy's total meltdown on live television? Drop your comments in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable news from the world of entertainment.